A normal regulated person wouldn't have freaked out. However, I completely lost it. My gosh, it's just one more thing that I have to do. It's one more thing that I have to clean up. Hi, and welcome to Why Am I Like This? This is a 5-part series to help moms understand anxiety when you're tired of carrying everything alone. And today we're going to discuss a mom's guide to small messes. And I want to start with a personal story. And this story takes place about 8 years ago. And so to paint the scene, I am newly divorced. I'm a single mom raising my oldest was 2 years old at this time. And we're sitting in the apartment. I'm there with my best friend, her 2 sons, my daughter, and my niece. So there's 4 kids. All of them are under the age of like 6 or 7, I believe. So we're just hanging out. My friend and I are talking, and the 4 children are watching TV. Okay, so we've got the TV going. We have 4 kids being 4 kids. I'm pretty sure they were eating a snack. They all had drinks. And then my friend and I were chatting, right? So cue one of the children spilling their water cup all over the floor, right? So a normal regulated person wouldn't have freaked out. However, I completely lost it. And this is a memory that's pretty ingrained into my brain, unfortunately. So I yelled at the child who spilled the water. And logically, I could think this wasn't a big deal. It wasn't red wine, it's not going to stain the carpet. But all I could think about was, my gosh, it's just one more thing that I have to do. It's one more thing that I have to clean up. I've got to get up. I have to clean it. I have to fill the water. And, if I'm being realistic, now I have to try and repair what I just did at the same time because I just reacted. I didn't respond. I just reacted to the situation. And I was overstimulated. I was completely overloaded in my mind and in my body. And from there, I see the look on my friend's face who's, like, whoa, dude, chill out. Like, this isn't a big deal. It was just water. And again, logically, I know that, right? I know this isn't a big deal. However, I just couldn't handle it in that moment. I was just done. So now I'm feeling shame and I'm feeling guilty because now I have a witness to everything that just happened, right? So from there, I am now trying to process in real time all of these emotions that are happening. And for me, it was what I call a snowball effect. And it was like the icing on the cake. All of these things had compounded throughout my day, right? But if we go, if we think even bigger than that day, it was that month, it was that year, right? Going through a divorce. I was in my master's program and I was also working full time and then living alone, trying to be a single parent and rely on my village, coming from a person who also could do everything herself and didn't need help, right? But it was just all of the things that had just led to this explosion. So that the feeling of shame and guilt were definitely real strong after following, the feelings of that overstimulation. So what's happening in the mind and the body in a situation like this, right? Because we've all been there. We've all had this moment where we've exploded, whatever. And that explosion looks different for some people. It's not always, yelling. Sometimes it's crying. Sometimes it is more of that anger outburst, or it's that shutting down and retreating into yourself, or physically completely leaving the room and ignoring the people that you're around. So the body has just decided that this one more thing just isn't manageable anymore, and you're at capacity, and the amygdala, just kind of hijacks everything, and you just start reacting instead of responding. And this is what happens when we have accumulated all these little micro stressors, right? There wasn't one big thing that happened. In this story, it was just a cup of water, right? It wasn't a big deal. It was going to dry on its own. I didn't even really need to clean it up. All I had to do was get her more water. But my system was just completely overloaded, and it saw this situation as a threat. It, interpreted it as being dangerous because I was stuck in survival mode. I was in this fight or flight loop that I wasn't able to get out of at the time. And that mess just really signaled danger to my system. And the brain, unfortunately, doesn't know the difference, right? It doesn't know the difference between a true threat, being in true danger, or this is a mess that I now have to clean up. This is a situation that I now have to deal with that I don't have capacity to do. And that happens even with the mental load. So we have this overstimulation of everything going on, and then the mental loops get activated, right? Okay, well, now I'm, a terrible mother, terrible aunt, whatever it is. And then those mental loops start creating this story, which just continues with the activation. So what can you do about it? What can you do when you are in this moment and you are reacting instead of responding? And how can you make sure it doesn't happen again, right? So we know the why. We know we're overstimulated. We have reached capacity. We've had all of these things that happen throughout our day, throughout our week, throughout our month, throughout our year, right? That we haven't dealt with, we haven't processed. So we've reached our capacity. And now we're going from, having capacity at, maybe 40% to 90%. So I've only got 90% or even 95% capacity to deal with the little day-to-day things, which is why a cup of water is going to completely leave me exploding, because I don't have the capacity to deal with it. And that is why you may find yourself not having the capacity for a mess on the floor, for the Legos still being out after bedtime, for the dishes being full, in the sink, for the dog getting into the trash and knocking it over, right? You don't have capacity to deal with those anymore. So what do you do? Where do you begin? Deep breathing. I'm a firm believer that deep breathing is the foundation of all of our tools. Okay. So we need the deep breaths to be automatic in order to be working in the background while we are using other coping tools and while we're working on the healing and the rewiring. So deep breathing isn't that oxygen mask that drops down when, the plane is going down. It's the cabin pressure, right? So the deep breathing is the thing that's going to keep you grounded, and it's going to keep you regulated. And then it's the steady force before everything feels overwhelming. So here is a simple breathwork exercise that you can incorporate right away. So anxiety often spikes when you're switching roles or tasks or like environments, right? Especially if you're a mompreneur. So if you can use physical doorways as anchors, as these reminders for these nervous system resets, it's going to be incredibly effective for you. So here's how it works. Every time you pass through a doorway, whether that be from the kitchen to the living room, bathroom to the hallway, your office to the rest of the house, right? I want you to just pause for 5 seconds. And I want you to just take 3 deep breaths. I want your exhale to be longer than the inhale. That's it. That's really all you have to remember. Anytime you are walking through a doorway, I just want you to take it a little slower. Maybe actually pause before you step through and take 5 seconds, just 5 seconds out of your day to take those 3 deep, slow breaths and tell yourself, we're shifting, we're safe. I'm shifting, I'm safe. You can place a hand on your heart, a hand on your belly, or none at all. But just tell yourself out loud or just in your mind, I'm shifting, I'm safe. This is going to interrupt that fight or flight loop. It's going to help reset your amygdala. It's also going to give your prefrontal cortex a chance to kind of come back online so you can make better decisions with more clarity. And it's going to prevent, that one more thing explosion by lowering the activation, because it's processing the stress throughout your day. Your home is full of built-in nervous system, reset points. Doorways aren't just where you walk. They're transitions, they're portals. Transitions are often where anxiety spikes. So every time you walk through a doorway, you can rewire, this pattern with your breath. Practice taking 5 seconds before you respond to your partner, to your children, in a business meeting, and take a deep breath. This is going to help you slow down. It's going to help you learn to respond and instead of react. So in the next video, we are going to dive into the thought that almost every mom carries secretly, right? Do you think you're a bad parent? Let's rewrite that anxiety story. All right. You're going to understand why this thought shows up and also why it's not the truth. I'm really excited for this one. Thank you so much for joining me today. And until next time, embrace every moment.